Okay.
Well, thanks for meeting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Super excited about the Denver Postmodern Therapist Gathering.
I know, me too. It was so great last year.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Killed. And it's back for more. So, just for our viewers and our listeners, if you could start out, tell us a little bit about yourself, sort of locate in relation to being a therapist, or whatever you call yourself these days.
Okay.
And then, yeah, maybe a little bit about what brought you to this work, and then we can kind of hop into the workshop that you're going to be teaching on April 27th.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Jenn Rushneck, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and a licensed addiction counselor. And I work at Heartwork Center, which is a narrative therapy center that I co-founded with a group of super cool people to try to experiment and do postmodern type goodness, I guess you could say. Yeah, how did I come to therapy? I think I've always had a long track to therapy, really. I was a teacher for a long time, like a whole lifetime before this. And I was always the teacher that got the kids that no one knew what to do with. So they were always sort of like, I don't know what to do with that kid, send them to Jen's room, Miss R's room, whatever. And those were the kids that often struggled with, I don't know, families that couldn't hold stories of them or school systems that couldn't hold stories of them. So I would kind of come up with creative ways to help kids learn, which really weren't that creative, but in a pretty dominant school structured system, they seemed pretty radical, like having kids stand up or walk around while they're learning or, which again, I don't think is very radical, but it was then at that time and also in the setting that we were in. And then those kids did well and they kind of thrived in an environment where they were seen as human beings, not just as like children that didn't know much. I know, weird.
Wow.
So I kind of wanted to pursue therapy after that, just because I enjoyed that work more than I enjoyed the content of teaching. So I went into counseling thinking I was going to be a school counselor, but then I sort of took a left turn and went into addiction work. And I think, I don't know, I'm always kind of confused by that part of my story. I'm not quite sure how I ended up there. I've always had a real affinity for folks that struggle with addiction. Even when I was a young kiddo, I remember like arguing with my parents about like, no one wakes up and wants to be a junkie, Mom. Like, because people are like, just don't do it. I grew up in the like DARE era, like, just say no to drugs, and Ronald Reagan, that, there was a whole campaign, well, Nancy Reagan was always like, just say no, and like that works, or it's that easy, or I don't know. Right. So I just thought that was a pretty bad-sided view of people, like that if you're just a bad person that does drugs, and so we just kind of say no and like keep them separate, and I've never been a us versus them kind of person, so I think, ever since I was little, I was really interested in it, and I really enjoy working with people who are haunted by it. Yeah, so
haunted.
Yeah, I think it's a haunting for sure.
Yeah, that's often a common thread in the narratives that come into this room.
Yeah, for sure. There's just like a demon or a beast or something that... it's a pretty insidious phenomenon, I think, that sort of can really overtake people and overtake their sort of best selves, I guess, the people they know themselves to be. It really does a great job compounding that and hiding that from them so that they don't remember it anymore. And so I think my job is really to help them remember that, and I always like to say I like to put a leash on addiction. Like, it's really huge, and it might always be with you, but it's good to like make it a little smaller, maybe put a leash on it so that you know where it is and you're actually in control of it instead of it being in control of you. So,
And for any of our viewers or listeners that would come to your workshop at the Denver POMO Gathering, they're going to be hearing more about your your stories, maybe a bit about your background, but also kind of like what your work with clients or like ways that you found narrative to be specifically helpful.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about the workshop that I'm giving because I think in traditional addiction therapy, there's some really, shall I say, interesting modalities. And like, I'm not here to bash any modality. I think that like whatever works for people works for them. Yeah. But I think that addiction gets talked about in such pathologizing ways, and that we actually have a cultural system that's it's still based on the moral model. Like if you drink and drive, well, you're going to jail or you're sentenced to these classes. Like you're a bad person that did a bad thing and you get punished. And that's not actually how I believe addiction to be at all. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. And that's not to say we don't take accountability for those actions, but punishment and the moral model doesn't work. It doesn't help people heal from it. It doesn't help them have a relationship to substances that they want or a relationship with family members that they want. Yeah. And so I'm excited to kind of talk about that in this workshop because I think there's so many pathologizing viewpoints or very sort of like protocol type viewpoints to treating addiction. And I like to offer up maybe a transpersonal view, like the addiction is really this transpersonal force that's been on the planet for a long time, and it's always been here. It's like cockroaches, it will always be here. But it just enacts on people in different ways or somewhat similar ways. And so I think that's important to talk about, and that when you're in a room where addiction is present, you also have to be aware of that as a therapist. Yeah. And so I don't think that gets talked about a lot. And so I'm hoping to really bring that to people at the gathering and just have a great conversation about that. Like, how are people running up and rubbing up against addiction in their own work, and how can we all kind of get better at it, because it's such a crisis. It's taking it's the number one killer of people in the United States right now. Wow. So like we need to, it's beat out car accidents, it's beat out everything. So like, like it's here. Yeah. So let's not like keep turning away. Like, how do we sort of face it and look at it in a way that can work? Yeah.
And so this workshop is really going to be helpful for anybody from like grad students to like practicing professionals. Yeah. Right. Like this is actually just like such a I don't know, like in some ways an old, but kind of a new way.
Yeah. I think we've all been like narrative therapists have kind of been doing this subversively for a while, but it's not. I worked in addiction treatment for a long time, and it's not what gets talked about in addiction treatment. It's not
what's
like the MO
substance abuse class.
No, it's not. Yeah. And so it has been around subversively for a while, but I would like to make it more of an open conversation so that people can get help that works and help that they need. Awesome. So that's what I hope to bring, and I can't wait to do it.
I'm so excited. It's so good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. It's so good to see you.
See you on April 27th.
All right.